Today I'm going to be sharing my opinions on the three major grading companies for your comic books: CGC, CBCS, and PGX. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons, give you my honest review, and then you can make your own determinations on what you want to get. So stay tuned and check it out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris and this is my channel We Love Comics, and today I wanted to share my opinion of all three of the major grading companies. And like I said in the beginning, we have over on the left we have CGC, in the middle we have CBCS, and on the right we have PGX. Now the first thing I want to say is a lot of times it goes to your own personal preference, so there is no absolutely best company and there is no absolute worst company. I've heard good and bad with all three companies, so it really depends on your own personal experience. So I'm going to be sharing my personal thoughts on this. Now, you may agree, you may disagree, you may have a difference of opinion, but that's what it's all about. I'm going to be sharing my version of what I feel about them, give my honest opinions about them, because in this community, we need to be honest about certain things, because otherwise we're really not helping the people that might be watching videos like this to help them make an informed decision on something. And you don't want to base things just on what's popular or what people all gravitate to. You want to go with what's best for you and your reasons for grading books. So without further yabba-dabba-doo, let me get into this. And like I said, this is my own personal opinion. So, as we see, we got the CGC, CBCS, and PGX. In my opinion, all three have their strengths, and all three have their weaknesses. So it really depends on the scenarios. Now, let's start with CGC. Well, let's go by basically on just first appearance. To me, overall, now, I have another book because with the CGC, they have a new label. I really like this label, and as you could see the difference in the label, first of all, I love right here, I love the hologram. As you could see, the numbers on the newer ones are not only a little bit bigger, but also brighter, and they put the color of the pages right here. It looks beautiful, and I love the fact in the back it's indented so you can grab it. So as far as aesthetically pleasing, of the three, I really feel, in my opinion, that CGC looks the best. As far as size, they're all pretty much the same. To me, the weakest one, and this is the newest label of the CBCS, I like the little emblem here, but to me, of the three cases, this one feels the weakest. It doesn't feel as strong. It almost feels like I can bend it very easily. Of these two, again, as if I try and bend them, the CGC has a little bit more flexibility, and the casing for the PGX is the most sturdiest, or the most sturdy. So as far as comparing with the new CGC label and everything, as you see here, they're pretty much dead even. So with the newest version of the CGC, it's pretty compatible as far as the strength to the PGX, but by far the worst one as far as the casing and the strength is the CBCS. It has a lot more bendability, it feels like a cheaper type of plastic, and it doesn't feel as thick. Which means if you ever put too many in a box, or if, you heaven forbid, drop one, to me, this one feels like it's more fragile and might break faster. These have a lot more protection as far as the thickness. So as far as overall aesthetics, I really think the CGC is the number one, and so it's going to be the most pleasing to look at. As far as clarity, I think of the three, CBCS has the clearest plastic. because as you can see, the colors don't pop out as much. And I have one of the Mylar covers, so that should make it a little easier. This one doesn't have any cover at all. So they all pretty much show the comics pretty well, front and back. I feel as far as the fonts are concerned, now this is an old PGX label. As far as you can see with the writing, even with the newer ones. Now let me see if I have the new PGX label. Give me a second. I know I did a video the other day. No, alright, I don't have the new label. Alright, but as far as readability, the PGX has the bigger font. So, I mean, right here, CBCS, their font is almost impossible to read, especially if you're an older person or somebody with, vision problems. CGC is a little bit bigger, but still could work a little bit better. And the PGX, and again, this is an older label, but you can see it's a lot easier to read because it's got the bigger font. So that stands out a little bit. And these are cosmetic things. Now, as far as the biggest things, pros and cons, let's first go with the CGC. The pros are, the number one reason most people want CGC is they can get the most value for their comic. In other words, they can sell those for the higher amount. So if CBCS and PGX, if all three of these were X-Men #1, all three were 3.0 with off-white or cream to off-white pages like this one is, this would by far sell the highest. This would be the second highest, and that would be the least. Now, that's good if you are, slabbing comics for profit. If you just like the way they look or you want them to be protected, well, that's not going to really matter, because if you never sell your comic, then that's not going to go into play. But that is the number one reason of the strength for CGC. CBCS is basically, like, if you thought this was number one, this would be like 1A. So they're fairly close, but CGCs tend to get more value as far as resellability. What that also means is you're going to pay a lot more. So I paid for this book $2,000. With a CGC, you might spend $1,950, so it'd be pretty close. With the PGX, you might end up buying it for $1,800. So as far as purchasability, to be able to get an item for cheaper, PGX you're going to end up getting for a lot cheaper most of the time. So if trying to get a comic that you want is determined by price alone, you'll tend to get these for a cheaper price. And obviously there are reasons for that. There were some situations that happened years ago where I'm not sure if it was actually proven or not, because they said there was a video saying about a book. It was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book. And supposedly a person opened it. Long story short, that video got debunked. So there could have been other situations. Each company makes mistakes, because I know a lot of people that have had horror shows with CGC and CBCS. But PGX has got that bad reputation, and sometimes, like they say, a few bad apples spoil the tree. So let me give a couple of strengths and weaknesses. And at this point, I am mainly going to talk about these two companies, because I've only done business with CBCS once, so I really don't want to get into it as much with them, because of the fact that I haven't had that much experience with them. But they are so very similar to CGC in so many ways, it's primarily going to be almost the same kind of review. So, like I said, the biggest strength of CGC, and the absolute number one reason why people get it, is you're going to sell your comics for more. Me, I don't sell my comics. And if I ever had to, for example, with this book, if it was a CGC, it might sell for more. Well, I can always crack this open and have it regraded by CGC if I wanted to. But I basically, for my own reasons, I like the slab books because I know these are going to be protected. If I ever want to sell these, I can worry about that later. But I don't buy them trying to flip them or turn around and sell them, because I collect them and I like to view them. So for me, they're protected. And also, with these slabs, as you can see the back of the book. So if you have a comic that has an interesting back, that's something, unless you take it out of a regular bag and board, you're not going to be able to see that. So that's what I like about the slab books. They protect them. You also are going to know pretty much if these books are what they say they are. And that is always appreciated to me because, how many people have bought an unslabbed book and found out that, at one point it was trimmed or a page was missing that even a seller might have not known about. So let's get into the cons of CGC. To me, there are 5 major cons, and I actually listed this in the comment section of a video I made the other day. Okay, the number one con for me with CGC is they are going to take so much longer than what they say as far as returning your comics. Expect on a 30 business day pay to wait between 4 and 5 months for your comics. Now, because they're the most popular, most people are going to ship their comics to that company, and they are fairly understaffed. So you will wait between 4 and 5 months on average to get your comics back. So if it's a comic you need right away, good luck with that, unless you want to pay the higher prices. Now that's another reason. Number 2, CGC and CBCS are the 2 most expensive. Now there are so many different categories that there's just too many of them to even mention, otherwise this video will be an hour long. With PGX, you have basically 2 ways to pay, either from 1978 and above or below 1978. The only exception is if a book is valued at more than $5,000, you have to pay 1%, I think, and the maximum is $100. So you're going to spend a lot more money, especially for major key issues. I mean, good luck, with the amount of money it will cost if you had a Detective Comics 27 at a 8.5. That's going to be in the multiple hundreds of dollars to have that book graded with either CBCS or CGC. So as far as how much it's going to cost you, by far this one's going to be cheaper. But again, remember, you're not going to be able to sell it as much. You will also get this book faster. Their turnarounds are more on time. They have the 8-day, they have the average of a 20-day, and they're pretty much on schedule. But again, that's most likely because of the fact that less people are sending their books there. Okay, number 3, CGC's customer service. And I could pretty much say for CBCS, but again, I haven't dealt with them that much. Their customer service is atrocious at best and non-existent for the most part. There have been times I've sent them messages, left messages, emails, to where they never responded. PGX, every time there's been a problem or a situation or just to confirm something, they are there to respond fairly quickly. So if you have a question about a book or anything, they are pretty good at returning your conversations. And I remember the first book I ever sent to them was my Walking Dead issue number 1, which I wanted to get verified for signature. And they actually called me up on the phone and said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this book that we got, it had some water damage inside. Now, I wasn't aware of that because I didn't look inside the book, so that's my own fault for that. But they said if I wanted to have it pressed, they could help fix that. Now, they could have not said anything at all. They already got the money. They could have graded it, and I could have got a much lower grade. They went out of their way. I've heard so many horror stories with CGC. Even the biggest one, and I'm surprised this didn't ruin their reputation, about 2 years ago or so, they had this new version of the label where they didn't have the inside little sleeve they put the comic in, and comics started to warp. And people didn't get refunds. People actually had to pay shipping and handling to have it sent back so they can regrade it, and they couldn't even guarantee the grade. So just imagine if you had a 3.0 X-Men number 1 here, and you had it in that one particular casing where it warped. Now you send it back, you have to pay to get it shipped, and now it comes back a 1.0 because their casings damaged the comics. They handled that very bad, and a lot of people stopped buying from them. Now, PGX's problem I've explained with a past situation, and as far as I've seen multiple times where people would, for example, take out a book from PGX and send it to CBCS or CGC, and they would relatively come back in the same grade. Now, always keep in mind, because, like, for example, if somebody took one of these out and it was an 8.0, and you sent it to CGC or CBCS and it comes back either an 8.5 or a 7.5, keep in mind that you are talking with human beings who are grading these comics. So it goes to their own personal perspectives. So that is going to vary, not only company to company, but person to person. Because I could take this book and send it back into CGC, and it could come back a 3.5 or a 2.5. Sometimes it depends on the mood of the person, how busy they are. You know, if you spent 9 hours a day grading books, and this was the last book for the day, and that person really wants to go home, or they're really tired, and they're not really paying attention, that can affect the grade. So don't always think that if you're sending a book to any of these companies that they're going to be 100% on the mark, because it is subject to their own personal interpretation. Now, they do have a couple of people that verify them, but, I mean, if you have deadlines and you have thousands upon thousands of books, you're really not going to take the time it would necessarily take to really go over the book, you know, in the fullest of detail. All right, let me pause this for 1 second. I had a couple other thoughts about it. Give me a second to regain my thought. Okay, another key factor. With CGC, you have to have a paid subscription, or you have to go to a comic book store that actually deals with CGC to be able to send in your comics. With PGX and even CBCS, you don't have to have a paid subscription. There is an option for one with CBCS, but you don't have to. You can send them in straight from, you know, from your home. PGX does not have a paid subscription, so anybody can send their books in, which means it's a little bit more convenient. Because if you don't want to pay the yearly fee to get these graded, or if you don't have a comic book store near you that's within, you know, a certain amount of driving time, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to get your books graded. Now, is it impossible? No. But if it's more difficult, that makes it, you know, not as easy to be able to send them in. With PGX and CBCS, because I want to include them in this, you can go right on their websites. You can download the forms, you don't have to pay a fee, and you can have your books shipped out. Makes it a little bit more convenient. Another thing that is not the best, CGC and CBCS do not have in-house pressing services. Now, I know that CGC does do pressings and dry cleanings, but it's outsourcing. In other words, they don't have it in-house. I don't believe CBCS does it at all. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know, but I haven't heard them ever speak about the fact that they do pressings or dry cleaning services, even with an outside source. But I do know that CGC does, but PGX has an in-house pressing and cleaning service. Now, I haven't used the outsourcing, but one thing I can tell you is they now have to take your comics, they have to mail them to somewhere else. So how long is it going to take for that to happen, as far as how long it takes for them to get it, how long it takes for them to be able to press them, and how long it takes for them to send it back to CGC to start their grading, you know, process. And with that extra amount of trips, because now you're talking back and forth twice with mailing the comics to this presser, more chances of your comics getting damaged in the mail. And I've seen a lot of people, when they get graded books by CGC, they'll say, oh, well, this corner wasn't bent when I sent it in. So the more times a comic has to be mailed, the more chances that your comic could get damaged. And the company is not going to care how it arrives. They're going to grade it as is. So if you had a 9.8, or let's say you had a 9.6 book, and you thought a pressing would turn it into a 9.8. Well, you send it to CGC, they have to mail it out to their outsourcing of the pressing and the dry cleaning, and then, you know, God forbid, it gets damaged in the mail. Even with the pressing, it comes back a 9.4. PGX has in-house pressing and dry cleaning, and I've used them several times. And as a matter of fact, all 4 comics that I will be getting soon that I sent in from PGX from a video I made a couple of days ago, they are going to be doing the dry cleaning and the pressing. So there's a lot of pros and cons. And I'm going to put the CBCS book back in here so you can see all 3. So to me, this is what I do. If it's an older book or one that needs to be dry cleaned and pressed, I will send them to PGX. Worst comes to worst, if ever there comes a day where I have to or want to sell a book, I can always take them out and send them, for example, to CGC if I want to get the best selling price. But to me, as of now, I collect them, I enjoy them, so I want to enjoy them at the lowest price possible. And if that means getting a graded PGX and it's $200, $300, $400, $500 cheaper, well, that's more money in my pocket. If I want to have a signature verification, and that's another thing I forgot, CGC does not do signature verifications. That's why if you send CGC in a book that's already signed, even if it's one, like, for example, let's say you went on, let's say Alex Ross has a website where he sells guaranteed signatures, and he sends you a comic with his own personal certificate of authenticity, which guarantees, or even other people that get the Scott Campbell from his website. He has personally signed Scott Campbell versions of his comics, and he gives a certificate of authenticity. Well, if you send that to CGC, it will come back with a green label that says writing on the front cover. Because if it's not witnessed, they will not verify. Both CBCS and PGX do signature verifications. So to me, if you have a signed book that's already been signed, it is not beneficial to send them to CGC. Let's say, for example, you go to a yard sale and you find out a person that had no knowledge about comics, and you get a Batman issue #1 signed by Bob Kane. Now, obviously, Bob Kane is no longer with us, so there would be no way you would ever get a yellow label with CGC, so you would have to send them to either one of these two. So, to me, as far as the signatures, that's the only time I dealt with CBCS. They ended up verifying all of the ones that I had, and I knew they would come back verified because I got them signed myself from the actual people at Comic-Cons way back in the days. So both of these companies will do the verification. So that's another thing to consider. As much as people love CGC, if your book is already signed, it kind of wastes that signature, even with a certificate of authenticity, to send it to this company. So again, I'm not being a hater or a lover because, as you can see, I have all 3 companies. But I'm not going to hate on one because other people say you're supposed to hate on them. And I'm not going to love one just because everybody says it's the best one. Because if people were being 100% honest, the reason that CGC is #1 is they sell better. Which means people care more about the amount of money they can make on a comic instead of enjoying the actual comic itself. Because to me, that's one of the reasons why I love the key issues so much. As you can see, these are all key issues. I mean, these are beautiful covers. I collect, especially nowadays, mostly Silver Age, Golden Age, and as you can see here, even Bronze Age key issues, because they're beautiful to look at. And all 3 of these are beautiful to look at. Because if I didn't show the labels, and you just saw the bottom part right here, who would be able to pick which is which? You wouldn't be able to tell. So if you're basing things, because anybody is going to have brand loyalty. Me, I don't have brand loyalty. I go by what serves me the best in my own personal interest. I was never one of those Marvel, all Marvel and no DC. Because as you can see here, 2 Marvel and a DC. When I used to drink soda, I no longer drink soda, but I preferred Coke, but I didn't hate Pepsi. If I had to drink it, I would drink it. As far as like the restaurants, as far as like McDonald's or Burger King. Well, I'm a vegetarian now, so I don't eat the meat anymore, but I loved and preferred McDonald's, but I never had a problem going to Burger King. As far as batteries, Duracell versus Energizer, I didn't care, as long as it made my whatever I needed the battery for run. PlayStation and Xbox. I was never one of those people that said, oh, I gotta love the Xbox and the heck with PlayStation. I actually would get both of them. So to me, brand loyalty is great, but it shouldn't be your only reason to purchase things, and you should definitely never purchase things on peer pressure. Just because everybody online says CGC is the best, but doesn't give you many reasons, and just because everybody wants to hate on PGX and doesn't give you many reasons, should not be a factor of why you get something. Don't ever let people's pressures dictate what you do, because unfortunately there are a lot of bullies out there, and I'm not talking about bullies like in high school, but I'm talking about people that are kind of, they have to really make you think that you have to listen to them, otherwise you're wrong. Don't ever do that, because you're the one that suffers in the end, and you're the one that owns these books. So somebody could be watching this video and absolutely hate that I said something good about PGX, and could absolutely hate that I said something bad about CGC. Each one has its advantage. So if I want like a newer book that doesn't need to be pressed, or something from like 1975 up, which this is, I would normally send it to CGC, and I don't mind the wait if I have to. I don't mind paying the extra price if I have to. But if I have an older comic that's very valuable, or something like, for example, a Golden Age book, or a comic that I need to have pressed, I'm going to send it to PGX. Now, if I have an older book or a newer book that's signed and it doesn't need a pressing or dry cleaning, I'm going to send it to CBCS. So each one is going to have its benefits. But unless you're going to be honest about your reviews, then you're basically just doing brand loyalty, and you're not really helping the people viewing this. So I cannot say what other channels do, nor do I care, because it's their opinion as well. But anybody that comes here, I will give them my honest opinion. I will give my honest feedback. But keep in mind, that is my opinion. It does not mean it has to be yours. So if you didn't agree with anything I said in this video, that's perfectly fine. But if somebody watching this gets something positive out of this that they didn't hear anywhere else, and it made them rethink the way they get their comics graded, or may get their comics graded, well then it was beneficial, and that's why I do it. So if you appreciate videos like this, please share them. Get people out there so they can formulate their own opinion. I'm not going to just sit here and say one is great and has no flaws, and say one is bad and it can do nothing right, when that's not being truthful. I'm going to give my honest opinion from my own personal experiences, because customer service with CGC, other than the fact that they don't return messages, I mean, I've never had a damaged comic arrive or a cracked case or anything like that where I had to deal with their customer service on that level. So I really don't know as full depths, but I can also go based on the experiences I've seen in other people's videos. So there's pros and cons to everything. There is not one perfect, and there is not one that's utterly garbage. But if you think one is the best and one is garbage, you are very much entitled to. And I'm not here to change anybody's opinion. I'm just here to share mine. So give it a thumbs up if you appreciate my opinion. If you thought this helped at all, I would love to hear it in the comments section. Tell me what you think. Tell me what I may have missed. Share your own personal experiences. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's not you, it's not I, it's we love comics. And I don't care what company grades them, as long as they're graded, and as long as they're in my possession, that's what it's all about. So thanks for watching. I will see you next video. And what the hell is that thing?